Conformity. How's it going?
Good evening, everyone. I did bump my camera a little bit when I was getting up earlier because I was trying not to wake the puppy up. Let me see if I can. Gotta just tweak it a little bit. There we go. I think that's better. Let me know if you think it needs to be adjusted more. I am very excited to be spending this Friday evening with you guys. I had a very productive day. I was doing a bunch of chores, getting the house ready for Andy to come back. He's coming back late tonight. He's back from his work trip, and I'm pumped. It'll be great to see him. The animals are going to go crazy. They've been driving me nuts. I have Dot in here with me right now. She's sleeping under my feet. It's adorable. Unfortunately, you'll have to take my word for it because I am not going to disturb her. As I was doing my chores today, I was actually watching a show that I used to really enjoy called Stan versus Evil. I think that's what it's called. Stan Against Evil or something. It's on Hulu. And the premise of the show is that the town is being haunted by the ghosts of 172 witches, so-called, that ended up being burned in like the 1600s or something. And they are like very, very demonically possessed now. And I was like, well, if these ladies were actually in possession of these demons, was he really doing the wrong thing by burning them? Food for thought, for sure. Anyway, today's opener is really exciting. It is an exclusive scoop from the Daily Mail. This is why I love the Daily Mail. Naming the names. Final batch of documents containing salacious allegations related to Jeffrey Epstein associates, including Prince Andrew, will finally be made public after dozens of John and Jane Does agree to the unsealing. DailyMail.com can reveal the last of the sealed court documents related to 167 of Epstein's associates will finally be made public. 4 years later, the papers refer to alleged perpetrators or individuals accused of serious wrongdoing. The final batch of court documents containing salacious allegations related to 167 of Epstein's associates, victims, and employees will finally be unsealed nearly 4 years after the disgraced financier's death. The material will be made public in the coming months, and DailyMail.com can reveal is expected to include information pertaining to at least one public figure. I don't know about you guys, but this sounds like it. This sounds like the list. Do you guys remember when they raided Epstein Island and they found a notebook and then it just disappeared and nobody knew where it went? It was a handwritten notebook that was inside of Jeffrey Epstein's safe, and it had a lot of names in it. So I'm really curious if this release of information will include that data. I have doubts about it, given how incredibly corrupt our intelligence agencies are, and we're going to get into that later in the show. We have some other really big stories, though, but this one was definitely the biggest and the most eye-catching for me. Let's read on. The documents refer to alleged perpetrators, right? Prince Andrew, who is accused of having sex with Epstein victim Virginia Roberts when she was 17, and Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz are understood to be among the individuals mentioned in the papers. Yeah, gross. Other high-profile men who have been associated with a pedophile include Bill Gates, Donald Trump, and Bill Clinton, though it is unclear if they will be mentioned. And I just have to say that Trump coming out and throwing shade at DeSantis over a picture taken with high school graduates back when he was 23 or 24, when he was teaching school. Yeah, I don't think that's a game he wants to play, since he also literally has a picture with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm just going to throw that in there, since that was the first thing that sprang to mind when I saw that thing on Truth Social that Trump was kind of throwing at DeSantis. The documents represent the last of the sealed material to be made public as part of the years-long process that has been rumbling through federal court in New York since before Epstein apparently killed himself in 2019 while awaiting trial for sex trafficking charges. The material was first filed in a defamation case brought by Roberts in 2015 against Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking and recruiting minors for Epstein. Still, never ceases to amaze me that she managed to get convicted for sex trafficking without a single victim. Crazy stuff. The documents, not a single victim, but a single person she trafficked to. The documents represent the last of the sealed material to be made public as part. Okay, we talked about that already. My bad. I get distracted and Forget where I was. The lawsuit was settled under seal in 2017, but the case material has since been gradually released in batches after numerous requests from media organizations. Good. The remaining documents are now set to be released after dozens of Johns or Jane Does mentioned in the papers did not object to their names being made public, which DailyMail.com understands includes the Duke of York. The individuals are not named in the February 8th filing, but all of them appeared set to be revealed when the documents are unsealed. Interesting. So everybody on the list seems to be okay with this? Weird. Jado 5 is listed as a victim who gave evidence at Maxwell's trial using only her first name. Robert's lawyers asked that her last name be redacted, but lawyers for Maxwell pointed out that she had used her second name in a media interview, so it should not. Jado 18 is an assistant state attorney who has been previously identified in a police report. Very interesting. There's the text of the matter. Of course, as always, the links for all of this stuff are in the description below this video. The individual appears to have been involved in the charges brought against Epstein in 2007, under which he served just 15 months in jail for soliciting a minor for prostitution as part of a sweetheart deal with state prosecutors in Florida. Yeah, I remember learning about that. Really shady. Jado 21 is described as a public figure by Maxwell's lawyers who objected to their name becoming public because of the only known reference to them being in Epstein's Black Book of Contacts. Roberts' lawyers pointed out that this person made no objection to their name being released. John Doe 23 is deceased, but was accused of serious wrongdoing, the documents state. They are not identified by name. I'm really curious what this ends up looking like. I don't think this is going to give us all the closure we're looking for, but it is enough of a development to kind of point all you guys toward it. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you guys right here at the start. We do have some really big stories otherwise to cover. Remember that lady we were talking about yesterday who put her name and her face on her whistleblower account of the St. Louis Children's Hospital gender transition? Yeah, so guess who's being investigated now? It's not her, it's them. And I honestly could not be happier with this development. I guess it's something that Josh Hawley is working on, so we are going to get into that for sure. In fact, let's hop over to that now. Do you want a dead daughter or an alive son? St. Louis Trans Clinic is investigated for harming 600 children as whistleblower reveals doctors perform transition surgeries on minors and teens who want hormones to avoid pregnancies or being gay. The Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital is under investigation by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey's office. It's Missouri. That's why Josh Hawley is involved. A former employee, Jamie Reed, said the hospital performs sex transitioning treatments and surgeries on minors and sometimes without parental consent. Yep, Reed alleges the hospital would pressure parents into allowing their children treatment by suggesting that not to do so would lead to their children's suicides. That's the ultimate emotional blackmail, especially for a parent. Unbelievable. A St. Louis transgender treatment clinic is under investigation for allegedly harming up to 600 children after a whistleblower claimed parents were bullied into allowing kids to take irreversible hormone drugs and undergo gender transitioning surgeries. So this is all what we talked about yesterday. Let me see if we can look at Dr. Allison Snyder Warwick. Interesting. Reed said she performed a sex transition surgery at the Center Hospital in the last few years, despite the hospital saying otherwise. Oh, so Jamie's account is disagreeing with that of the hospital. Fascinating. Bailey, the Attorney General for Missouri, said his primary goal was to make sure children were not harmed by individuals who may be more concerned with radical social agenda than the health of the children. And I think that is a fair analysis, but I think it's kind of incomplete because I think more than anything, all of the people who are involved in this stuff are motivated by money. They're the Mr. Krabs of the medical world. I kind of like that analogy. We're going to roll with it. These people will do anything for money, and especially when it comes to making lifelong patients who will constantly be needing their care, their prescriptions, and their ongoing attention. In her affidavit, Reed said in one instance, a girl was prescribed cross-sex hormones because she did not want to become pregnant. There was no need for this girl to be prescribed cross-sex hormones. What she needed was basic sex education and maybe contraception, she added, saying that a basic assessment of her case would have revealed that. But of course, one of the things that Jamie mentioned was that anytime someone would come through their door, they were 100% a hammer in search of a nail. and everything looked like a nail to them. A girl who didn't want to get pregnant, bam, cross-sex hormones, gender transition, and the kid who had seriously depraved sexual impulses, bam, gender transition, you're a girl now. She alleged that in another instance, a patient asked for their breasts to be removed and was given the surgery at St. Louis Children's Hospital, but just weeks later, the woman asked for them to, quote, be put back on. So they were not informing people of what this would look like. And they were not assessing whether these people were capable of consenting to this, because someone who says, can you put my removed body part back on me is clearly not in the mental frame of mind to be even possibly considering something as serious and life-altering as a gender transition. Reed draws the conclusion that proper assessment was not taken, the patient was not properly informed that the changes were irreversible. The former employee added 3 months later, the patient contacted the Surgeon General and asked for their breasts to be put back on. Had a requisite and adequate assessment to be performed before the procedure, the doctors could have prevented this patient from undergoing irreversible surgical change, but they didn't care because they made money off it. And now they have a patient to some degree for another for life. All right, they talk about how she came forward in the Free Press, which is Barry Weiss's Substack. Children come in changing their identities on a day-to-day basis. Children come in under clear pressure by a parent to identify in a way inconsistent with the child's actual identity. In these cases, the doctors decide to issue puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. What they should be doing is getting child protective services involved, because that is insane for this Munchausen by proxy to be being promoted by the medical field. That's incredibly unethical. At least one gender transition surgery was performed by Dr. Allison Snyder Warwick at St. Louis Children's Hospital in the last few years. In another shocking claim, she alleged that one 17-year-old was brought into the clinic by a man to whom he was not related. The teenager was living with the man. The teenagers started hormones as soon as they turned 18, but the patient's mental health very quickly deteriorated, and Reed claims it was soon revealed that the man who initially brought the child to the clinic was sexually and physically abusing him. Because of course they were. This is exactly like what happens in abortion clinics. I know that you guys know that pimps love abortion. Pimps love the fact that they can take their 15-year-old employees to the abortion clinic and get rid of the problem. This is exactly the same idea. Wow, like the overlap is almost identical. At least in my mind. You guys are welcome to disagree with me. I know that most people don't agree with me on my pro-life stance, but to me this looks very similar. Abusers using these instruments to make sure that they continue to get what they want. Despite learning of the alleged abuse of power, the center did not stop the gender transition treatment, the affidavit claims. Yeah, look at that. Okay, let's see if we can see more about the actual investigation. If we don't see enough in here, we're just going to hop right over to what Josh Hawley has to say about this. Wow, there's a lot going on here. Yep. We're going to go right over to Josh Hawley's statement. Hawley outlines investigation of Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital. Accountability is coming. It's so sweet, isn't it? Following the announcement by U.S. Senator Josh Hawley today that he is launching an investigation into a potential malpractice regarding minors at the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital, Senator Hawley has sent a new letter tonight to the university chancellor, hospital president, and the center's co-directors. Starting immediately, your institution must take steps to preserve all records, written and electronic, regarding gender-related treatments performed on minors since the opening of the center, the senator wrote. Additional oversight, inquiries, and outreach will follow. His letter went on to reference additional reporting about the center's practices, saying today's report builds on recent revelations that the center counseled educational authorities to conceal information from parents regarding their children's cross-gender identification. Yes, they weren't even telling parents in some of these instances. Encouraging teachers to lie to children's parents is unconscionable. If even a fraction of the whistleblower's new allegations is corroborated, the center should be immediately shut down. Senator Hawley spoke with Chancellor Andrew D. Martin of Washington University in St. Louis today and confirmed they will fully cooperate with the investigation. The senator was also assured that the whistleblower will be fully protected from retaliation. That's right, she better be. Read the full letter here and below. All right, Chancellor Martin and President Lolo. Earlier today, an extraordinary whistleblower report was published alleging egregious abuses of minors and potential medical malpractice at the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital. That report presented substantial evidence that, like so many other pediatric gender clinics across the United States, this Missouri-based clinic appears to have been operating without transparency, oversight, and accountability, and causing devastating harm to children in the process. Accountability is coming. Today, my office is launching an investigation into the center's treatment practices in order to present American taxpayers and parents with all the facts relevant to policymaking and medical treatment decisions. Starting immediately, your institutions must take steps to preserve all records, written and electronic, regarding gender-related treatments performed on minors since the opening of the center. Additional oversight inquiries and outreach will follow. Today's report, published in the Free Press, featured the testimony of a whistleblower who worked at the center for 4 years and who claims to have witnessed firsthand the manipulation of minors and their parents by medical professionals at the center. The whistleblower reported that the center's working assumption was to pursue aggressive and early intervention despite research indicating that the vast majority of children with cross-gender identification desist by puberty. The whistleblower further detailed examples of the center's staff subverting parents' wishes regarding their child's medical treatment, including by testifying against them in court and pressuring reluctant staff to get on board or get out. This report builds on recent revelations that the center counseled educational authorities to conceal information from parents regarding their children's cross-gender identification. So they were working in lockstep with teachers. Fascinating. On January 17, 2023, news reports indicated that Parkway School District in St. Louis County has been concealing students' chest binding from their parents, and that the center encouraged such concealment. Encouraging teachers to lie to children's parents is unconscionable. If even a fraction of the whistleblower's new allegations is corroborated, the center should be immediately shut down. As senator for the state of Missouri, it is my responsibility to fully investigate these serious allegations. In addition to preserving all documents regarding gender-related clinical treatments performed by the Center on Minors, please immediately provide my office with responses to the following questions consistent with federal privacy protection for patients. Additional questions will follow. I appreciate that. It's constant. Accountability is coming. Additional questions will be following. You can look forward to us speaking more in the future. 1. How many minors and what percentage of minors referred to the Center for Gender-Related Treatment have been eventually prescribed puberty-blocking drugs? 2. How many minors and what percentage of minors referred to the Center for Gender-Related Treatment have eventually been prescribed cross-sex hormones? So puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones. In how many cases and in what percentage of cases involving the prescription of puberty blockers to minors referred to the Center for Gender-Affirming Treatments, gender-related treatments have serious medical complications been reported? Great question. In how many cases and in what percentage of cases involving the prescription of cross-sex hormones to minors referred to the Center for Gender-Related Treatment have serious medical complications been reported? How many minors and what percentage of minors referred to the Center for Gender-Related Treatment have been observed to subsequently desist and return to their natal gender identity? If this research is unavailable, please explain why pharmaceutical interventions have been recommended at all. How many minors and what percentage of minors referred to the Center for Gender-Related Treatment are lost to follow-up study? What guidance, written or oral, has been provided by the center or center-affiliated personnel to third-party stakeholders in response to inquiries regarding youth gender transition in context with parents where parents or guardians are deemed insufficiently supportive of transition? Please provide an exhaustive accounting. Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be so great. And I'm so glad that we have people like Josh Hawley here keeping an eye out for the people of Missouri and for kids everywhere. I am so grateful that there are people like Matt Walsh. There are people like Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, but Matt Walsh has really made this his hill to die on, and I think that this is the right hill to choose. I think the time is long since past for us to be concerned about being called mean names by people, especially for those of us who are in a position where we can say these things. We have a moral obligation to speak up on behalf of kids and of parents who aren't as informed as they probably should be, and to speak out against parents who are working with Munchausen by proxy and trying to turn their child into what they want them to be. So I am so excited. I think that we will see great progress given this is in the hands of Josh Hawley, who is very competent and very good about follow through. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one. Set your Google alerts for that one. I don't know if you guys have ever set Google alerts, but Google will literally send you all the news articles about a given topic. I bet you a nickel you could just go into Google alerts right now and say Josh Hawley plus, St. Louis Children's Hospital, etc., and see what comes up in the future. Oh yeah, let me retweet this from Andy. Thank you, Andy. Andy's traveling right now. He'll be back soon. We're very excited to go see him. I might have to take the puppy to go pick him up. All right. Travel home safe, Andy, for sure. I'm live tweeting from the amazing Nashville airport. Yeah, he's stuck there. He had quite the layover there. He's amazing live music at every bar. Yeah, for sure. That's how Nashville is. Music City. It's great. Lori says, I won't believe it until I see it. I'm sure you're referring to the list from the Epstein case. I really won't either. I'm sure that there's a lot that we won't end up getting, unfortunately. But I think this is a good start, and I'm really glad that the media have held people's feet to the fire, and hopefully we can get some kind of closure here. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Casey says they swept NXIVM under the rug. Yeah, from what I understood about NXIVM, is that a lot of those ladies were saying that this was really what they wanted. And also, from my understanding, none of those ladies were underage, but I'm not sure. Andy has been super interested in some of this cult conversation stuff. In fact, we were watching a show about Skinwalker Ranch, which is similar to all the cult stuff. We watched a documentary about Scientology the other weekend and about socialism, since we were on the topic of cults. So that was really good and informative for sure. Virginia did an interview and talked about Trump at Epstein Island. Interesting. From my understanding, Trump was not a big fan of Epstein's, but he has a picture with him. So when he's trying to throw pictures at other people, he should remember that he has one with Jeffrey Epstein himself. Virginia, yep, Hunter's name will be on that list. Least surprising thing in this timeline. Yeah, honestly, nothing would surprise me less, but we already know that he delves into every conceivable type of degeneracy. So yeah, no, not surprising. Username 142 says, Andy, that's totally normal. You'd love Broadway if you enjoy live music. Yeah, for sure. There are hundreds of rings across America. Of course there are. This is a very serious problem. And parents need to constantly be on guard for this kind of activity that might possibly be affecting their kids. Something to take very seriously. We have some other things to take very seriously we're going to be talking about. Representative Massey was tweeting about something exceedingly suspicious, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Vote America First candidates, yeah, for sure. Like, that's what brought us Josh Hawley. He beat out Claire McCaskill. He ended up beating out Austin Peterson as well, but Austin then went on to do great things for the Libertarian Party. I'm really glad that we have Josh Hawley. And from my understanding, Austin Peterson has also been a big supporter of his as well, even though he was his vanquisher in the election. Wake Up Waverly says, this is like a horror film. Think like the visceral act of it, a cold, sterile, bloody procedure, kids convinced by a calculated agenda, and morally corrupt parents, doctors, and culture. Yeah. So that's like a crime drama. And then what we're seeing with the Biden family is similar kind of crime drama, except it's more like a mafia setting with that one. Wild. So we're going to talk about that too. And he says, yes, bring puppy. Andy says, I have Sour Patch Kids, Corn Nuts, and Monster Energy. He is equipped for the flight. I'm very happy for him. All right. Yeah, Wake Up Waverly says, health conscious and tasty for sure. For sure. All right, you guys, let's read what Thomas Massey has to say. And it's not good news, but it's a very eye-opening. Feds are tracking those who refuse to get a jab, but not for health information reasons. They have created abstinence codes, not abstinence codes. Proof, they don't flag for not having a vax if there were health reasons you couldn't take the vax. We're going to look at this whole article here, but let's read what it says. Z28.3, under immunization status. Use additional code if applicable to identify immunization not carried out because of contraindications, immunization not carried out because of patient decision for other and unspecified reason, immunization not carried out because of patient decision for reasons of belief or group pressure, immunization not carried out for other reasons. Z28.31, under immunization for COVID-19 status. Note, these codes should not be used for individuals who are not eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine as determined by the healthcare provider. So they are literally only looking for people who had an ideological objection to taking the COVID-19 vaccine, or as I like to call it, Trump's vaccine, which he was constantly touting even recently. Horowitz, we must stop the feds from tracking immunization status and imposing medical apartheid. Well, those are strong words. Let's see how he backs this up. We know that no product in the history of the world has been promoted with as much force as the COVID shots. Is that true? I don't know about that. You guys let me know if that is not the case. What other things have been strongly pushed? We also know that no group of people has been more maligned, discriminated against, and punished than those who rightfully chose not to get the shots. I feel like people during the Spanish Inquisition and probably Nazi Germany and maybe communism would probably disagree with that, but you can be hyperbolic. That's fine. And we know the government badly wants to track your vaccination status across a spectrum of healthcare and governmental databases. What exactly do you think the feds will do with that information, and why do they want it if not to discriminate against and punish those who don't comply? Well, I don't know. That seems likely. I'm exceedingly unwilling to give the government the benefit of the doubt, but let's read why they're saying this is happening. The latest news of the CDC tracking immunization status with new ICD codes should spawn a torrent of ironclad legislation in red states to prohibit such tracking. Now we're going to see what ICD stands for. So an ICD code, International Classification of Diseases. Interesting. Oh yeah, that's a cardiovascular defibrillator. That's not what that is. Okay, so this is for Medicare. The ICD is developed and published by the World Health Organization, the international standard for reporting diseases and health conditions. Medicare claims data include both ICD procedures and diagnosis codes across different files. All right, let's read about these ICD codes. Recently, the National File uncovered audio from a September 2021 CMS meeting. Okay, what is CMS? Oh my gosh. I didn't have time to look this stuff up beforehand, but it works to look it up with you guys as well. Centers for Medicare. Oh, okay. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That checks out. Right in line with our ICD codes. A CMS meeting in which Medical Officer David Berglund expressed an interest in the feds using a new ICD-10 code to track those who are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. We have had interest in coding people who are not immunized for COVID, said Berglund in his presentation. Well, it turns out that in April 2022, CMS implemented the following codes in the subcategory of under-immunization status. I thought I drank coffee recently enough to avoid that. My bad. Sorry, guys. Z28.310, unvaccinated for COVID-19. Z28.311, partially vaccinated. Z28.39, other under immunization status. But the most jarring point is the note placed at the bottom of these new codes on page 1915 of the new ICD catalog. Note, these codes should not be used for individuals who are not eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine as determined by the healthcare provider. Now, according to this perverted logic, not getting the gene therapy, his words, not mine, is somehow synonymous with an illness, disease, or diagnosis that would make the status eligible for an ICD code. That in itself is disturbing. Why? But what this note reveals is that they are only using the codes for those who refuse to get the shots, not for those who are somehow ineligible, as stated by their doctors. But why? If they believe that someone remaining unvaccinated is tantamount to having a vulnerable condition, then the important fact is just that they are not vaccinated, not why they're unvaccinated. What this clearly demonstrates is that they want to track those who refuse to get the shots. Well, there's a bit of a leap here, and I would like to see more information. What do you think they will do with that information? That's a good question. It's quite evident that they want the ability to identify the critical thinkers in this country and retaliate against them by engaging in medical apartheid. Okay, one more reach that I think might be a little bit too far. I appreciate what he's saying, and I'm really glad that he brought this note to our attention. but I would need to see more evidence of what they have in mind. In fact, I would want to know what exactly they were saying about why they thought this was necessary when they were pitching it, when David Berglund was talking about it initially in his presentation. We need not imagine that. We already have the warning of the nightmare from the past 2 years of denying travel rights, entry into stores, and even organ transplants based on this personal decision. What is also peculiar is that they rushed to get codes for the mythical disease of unvaccinated, but despite 1.5 million VAERS reports of COVID jab injuries, there is still no special ICD for COVID-19 vaccine injury. As Dr. Jessica Rose points out, there are now injuries associated with 14,000 of the 24,289 preferred term MDRA codes reported to VAERS, yet they still refuse to code one generically for the shot itself. That is a good point. As an aside, if you add up all the vaccine injuries reported to VAERS for all the shots from 3 decades combined, they only account for 21% of the total MedDRA codes. COVID shots chewed up 58% of all medical diagnosis codes in just 2 years. Wild. So clearly, the fact that they are diagnosing under immunization but not vaccine injury demonstrates this is not about medical billing or academic research, but imposition of biomedical tyranny. Maybe. We'll see. It's therefore quite evident that there is an urgent need for red states to block the transmission of private immunization information to the federal government. Yes, that I will agree with wholeheartedly. 100%. That's not speculation. That's an actionable plan. Consider the fact that states like New York passed a law making it a felony for state agencies to pass along information about criminal alien sex offenders to federal immigration officers. Yeah. The Second Circuit even upheld the constitutionality of the bill, even though immigration enforcement is a legitimate purview of the federal government, and immigrating and remaining here illegally are not constitutional rights. If blue states can protect criminal aliens from the feds, oh my gosh, excuse me. Should red states be able to protect Americans from medical apartheid facilitated by spying on vaccination status? That's a good question. At minimum, here's his plan of action. All red states should abolish their state immunization registries or at least require consent to be placed in them. Yes. Ban all immunization tracking. Yes. Preclude the health department and medical professionals from including a person's immunization records in any interstate or federal immunization tracking system without obtaining consent from the patients. Duh. Specifically, the ICD codes used for vaccine reluctance should not be included without the consent of the patients. Yes. Notify the citizen immediately if any federal agency pings a state or local office about the individual's immunization status. And finally, codify immunization status into state civil rights anti-discrimination statutes. That's a very good idea. There's never been an issue that is a bigger direct threat to our existence than the biomedical security state. Okay, once again, hyperbolic. We already know what the feds have done to us and what they are planning. We have seen what they've done to us. We aren't entirely sure what they have in mind and what people are willing to tolerate, although based on the way people just bent over for the COVID-19 pandemic, ridiculous mindset, I think we have an idea of what that would look like. Maria Van Kerkhove, the lead author of the WHO plan to copy China's lockdowns, recently warned, "We need to strengthen the systems within countries around surveillance. We are forewarned. Now it's our time to plan and fight back against this tyranny. This time we won't be able to contend that we didn't see this unimaginable degree of tyranny coming." I hope that he's being fully hyperbolic, and I hope that this stuff that he's predicting doesn't come to fruition, and that doesn't mean to say that he's wrong about it. Unfortunately, I feel like the last few years have shown us nothing except that people are incredibly easily cowed. They're very willing to go along with whatever the government says. They're very reluctant to push back in any degree, and they don't really... It's not that they don't care. It's that they feel like they don't have the position to stand up and say, nah, you're not going to do that. Whereas if enough people did that, it would put a stop to all of this stuff. I think we need to get that back through our heads. I think these are the hard times that are going to make strong men. But we'll see what happens with that. Definitely keep that in mind. All right, you guys. Andy says, I think that's probably accurate. I'm not sure what that means. Under-immunized. Yes. What else has been more rapidly forced on people on a scale that large? It's true. That is a huge scale. Ellen says government doesn't like pushback. It's entirely correct. Within a matter of months, even the internet took like 40 years to get to over 1 billion users. That's a good point. It's a WHO imposed designation. I think you're right. But why do we have to do what the WHO says to do? The WHO is not our governing body. It's some international foreign affairs type thing. Janet Yellen recently was talking about how all these different countries could get on board with being more green or something. And I have no idea why she cares about the international community. She works for the United States of America and ostensibly for the people of the United States of America, but I don't think she believes that at all. Jacob says, this is why I took the damn thing but didn't let my kids get it. Well, I hope it's not being held against you moving forward. They just added the vax to the standard recommended shots for children. Interesting. I didn't notice that, Andy. You'll have to show me that. They just need a list of all the dissenters. No biggie. Yeah, that's fine. Your name's going on a list. Potato. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it, guys. Not a big deal. At this point, I'd inject polio into my veins before relenting on this medical authoritarianism. I don't even care if it cures cancer. It would allow the WHO to obtain personal American data to be shared without patient consent. Exactly. And that's why his plan includes demanding that these people obtain patient consent before making these statuses or putting them into their charts. Sounds a lot like a HIPAA violation to me. Yeah, the World Health Organization should have nothing to do with my medical information. I'm absolutely uninterested. But you know what's really interesting? I was at the neurologist the other day, and I was also at our primary care provider the other day, and neither one of them asked me if I had gotten my COVID-19 vaccination. My neurologist assistant doctor asked me if I'd gotten a booster, and I said, no, not yet. And she was like, okay. And that was it. That was all. I was like, okay, great, not worried. And I don't think I've ever really had to explain my stance on it before. If I am asked about it, I typically just said, oh, I actually had COVID, so I felt like I had strong natural immunity, and I'm also actually immunocompromised and don't feel like compromising my immune system further, which I think you should be able to say, even if that's not actually true of yourself, because it's your damn business. It is your private information, and no one has a right to know. You're not sneezing in someone else's mouth. You're not injecting them with poison. You're not getting them hooked on crack cocaine. It is your personal information. And yes, there is a reason we have HIPAA, and that's actually really strongly safeguarded at pretty much every level of government. So hopefully there are lawsuits over this. Hopefully he can make a big enough fuss over this. And I hope that with Thomas Massey's attention to this, it will make a difference to the conversation. Oh, hell no, I will not be giving my infant that. No way. The American spirit is alive, but I fear only in the hearts and minds of the people at this point. Yeah, more and more reason on never giving up on 2A for sure. I saw a viral tweet the other day talking about how, saying something like, ish libs will say you don't need an AR-15. LOL, bruh, there is an active Chinese asset in the sky over the continental United States. And I was like, yeah. And I was thinking about it and I was like, you're right. No one should have to own a gun. We should be able to pick licorice off trees and drink lemonade out of rivers and run around completely naked with no consequences. That would be ideal, right? We don't live in that world. And this is the point I'm constantly making. We don't live in the perfect world. We don't. We deal with reality. We don't have a choice. And not facing reality means that we're going to be at a disadvantage. It isn't in our best interest to accept the world the way it is and take action on it that way. You tell him, girl. Yeah, okay, well, I'm pretty fired up about this. It's kind of irritating. I'm already on most of the lists anyways. I certainly am as well. Bodily autonomy is such a big right until it comes to the vax. Yeah, for sure. Paradise, yeah. All right, you guys, we're going to talk about government corruption. Shocking. I know, you guys had no idea. It's from Just the News. 2 FBIs. Whistleblowers accuse DC headquarters of trampling Constitution and field offices. Twitter files showed the agency's mission is now a perversion of the First Amendment, a 33-year veteran says. House Republicans think the federal agencies have become a weapon against their own apolitical employees and the constitutional rights of Americans. House Democrats think House Republicans have become a weapon against the prerogatives of federal agencies. They're right, and I'm glad. The parties traded laundry lists of grievances stemming from agency and congressional investigations from the Benghazi attack to the Russian collusion hoax at the first hearing Thursday of the House Judiciary Committee's Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Minority Democrats deemed the subcommittee itself a threat to the safety and integrity of law enforcement, arguing GOP rhetoric provoked a dirty bomb threat against the FBI after its raid on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago. You want to talk about bombs? Let's talk about the bombs that were planted on January 6th. Remember what the FBI found out about the person who planted those bombs? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The FBI is not fit for purpose. It needs to be dissolved. We're going to learn more about that for sure. Majority Republicans pointed out to their November staff report on FBI whistleblowers and the Justice Department's politicization. They also disagreed sharply on the nature of parent-led protests against school boards that prompted Attorney General Merrick Garland's explosive memo about domestic terrorism. The partisan dynamics carried over from Wednesday's House Oversight Committee hearing about government interference in speech, where Twitter executives admitted the pre-Elon Musk company used various tactics to suppress certain political content and covertly communicated with the feds. Disputes about COVID-19 policy and censorship played out only a small role at Thursday's subcommittee hearing, as when Rep. Matt Gaetz tried to discredit former Obama administration appointee Elliott Williams for his lobbying firms representing Google and Pfizer. This revolving door breeds distrust in the feds, Gaetz said. Democrats went after GOP witnesses too. Rep. Colin Allred mocked retired FBI agent and whistleblower Thomas Baker for describing the January 6th riot as a crimes rather than domestic terrorism, while Rep. Debbie Wasserman Schultz dismissed law professor Jonathan Turley's analysis of the Twitter files as opinion because he never worked at Twitter. Jonathan Turley is a law professor. He has every right to have an opinion on this stuff. Debbie Wasserman Schultz never worked at Twitter either, so I guess we can discount her opinion as well. The subcommittee has heard from dozens and dozens of whistleblowers just in the FBI, with one sitting for a transcribed interview Tuesday and many more expected to do so, Chairman Jim Jordan said. Rep. Dan Goldman demanded GOP staff turn over the notes from pre-deposition meetings with whistleblowers. Jordan retorted, "You didn't show up for the Tuesday deposition," prompting objections from Democrats that they've been left in the dark. Ranking Member Stacey Plaskett set the tone for Democrats by dubbing the subcommittee a place to settle scores, advance conspiracy theories, disrupt the FBI's work against, quote, chaos, and interfere in ongoing criminal investigations, including Trump's. Yeah, they set up his tax returns for 7 years. Again, trying not to swear. For 7 years, they hyped up these stupid tax returns, and when they finally came out, they were literally nothing. No one could find anything. They had no impact whatsoever. But that didn't slow them down. Echoing the Justice Department, Democrats denounced Jordan for rushing out subpoenas relating to Garland's school board memo. They also repeatedly emphasized the limits of free speech, right? Inaccurately and inartistically, with Plaskett implying that racist and hate speech are not constitutionally protected. Incorrect. This is from the 1776 Project. This is really important. Rep. Mike Johnson lays out the timeline of the DOJ's targeting parents at school board meetings as terrorists during today's weaponization hearing. Let's turn this up and see what he sounds like.
Has been said here about the fear of threats, but what we're concerned about in the scope of this committee is the fear of threats to the American citizens. The reason we use the term weaponization is because it is appropriate. We have so many examples of that across so many federal agencies. They were designed to serve and protect the American people and have been used in recent years against them, that it will take us probably 2 years to lay that out. But I just want to focus on one that's been mentioned this morning because the timeline is important. The school boards issue. On June 22nd, 2021, Loudoun County parent Scott Smith spoke out at his local school board meeting and he was arrested. On September 29th, citing Mr. Smith's arrest as an example, the National School Boards Association sent a letter to the Biden administration requesting federal law enforcement involvement in local school board disputes. Now, here's what's really important. We learned later that the White House helped the NSBA draft that letter to itself.
Sure did.
On October 4th, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued the now infamous memo directing federal law enforcement to mobilize against the parents of school children who protest at their local school board meetings. He turned the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the full weight of the Federal Department of Justice against the very citizens they were sworn to defend and protect. On October 12th, we learned that the Loudoun County parent Scott Smith's daughter was actually sexually assaulted at her school, and that the school board covered it up. And that was the reason why that dad showed up to protest.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that horrible story. The father of this daughter went to a school board meeting to protest, and he had to be physically removed because he was making people fear for their lives because they had covered up the sexual assault of his daughter. Wow. This man had more restraint than I definitely would have had, and I'm not even a parent yet.
9 days later, October 21st, happened to be the day previously scheduled for Attorney General Merrick Garland himself to appear before our House Judiciary Committee. In that hearing, as my colleagues will remember, he was forced to acknowledge before our committee that the NSBA letter was the basis of his memo targeting concerned parents. But he refused to acknowledge the obvious chilling effect that memo, involving the full weight of the federal law enforcement apparatus, would have on parents' protected First Amendment speech. He also, by the way, refused to commit to a mandatory, under federal law, mandatory ethics review of his own family's financial ties to advancing critical race theory in schools and its relation to his school board memo and the obvious appearance of the conflict of interest therein. I encourage all interested citizens to watch the video of that hearing. It was pretty contentious.
I'm going to have to look that up. That's very interesting. I'm going to retweet this tweet so you guys can watch the full video. It's about 5.5 minutes long, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. The former FBI agents and whistleblowers' affirmed GOP portrayals of the Bureau is increasingly politicized and centralized in D.C., running roughshod over field offices and rank and file. Personally, it breaks my heart to see this culture rot, said Baker, a 33-year veteran still closely engaged with the FBI, who faults former Director Robert Mueller for remaking the Bureau as an intelligence-driven agency that threatens liberty across the ideological spectrum. And we saw this yesterday when we were reading about how the FBI sent in an agitator to Antifa in Denver to those protests in the summer of 2020. This is a bipartisan issue, and this is something we should all be paying attention to. The Twitter files show the agency's mission is now a perversion of the First Amendment, he said, telling Representative Harriet Hagerman that we wouldn't be having this discussion today if FBI Director Chris Wray had publicly pledged the Bureau would not use speech alone as a predicate for investigations. Christopher Wray, man. Congress should rein in the CIA and NSA as well for reverse targeting practices that spy on Americans by finding foreign close contacts the agencies can portray as real targets, Baker said. Rep. Dan Bishop noted the Twitter files include a request from the Fort passed through FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan to restore Twitter's data feed to the Fort Meade-based NSA. Former Miami Special Agent Nicole Parker joined the FBI from a hedge fund after the September 11th terrorist attacks and held out as long as I could before leaving in disgust last fall. She broke down in tears as she described her field work in the Parkland shooting and her fear of testifying. Her testimony is very compelling.
Participating in the investigations of myriad criminal cases, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the 2017 Fort Lauderdale airport shooting, the Caesar Sayoc pipe bomb case, multi-million-dollar Ponzi schemes, crimes on the high seas, bank robberies, murders for hire, sexual assaults, extortions, and more. Yes, it was physically taxing and emotionally jarring, but I believed I was making an impactful difference. And every day, I woke up and I embraced being an FBI special agent until things changed. Over the course of my 12-plus years, the FBI's trajectory has transformed. On Bureau, the Bureau's mission remained the same, but its priorities and governing principles shifted dramatically. The FBI became politically weaponized, starting from the top in Washington and trickling down to the field offices. Although FBI employees have their First Amendment rights, they are not at the liberty to allow their personal political views or preferences to determine their course of action or inaction in any investigation. Lady Justice must remain blind.
I thought her testimony was very good. I think that what she has to say is essential, and you can call her a spook if you want. I'm so glad that she's speaking up because this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what we need. When we complain about how the deep state is horrible and unaccountable and ridiculously cloaked and closeted, we need people like this to come out and expose what they're really doing, because that's dangerous. Going toe-to-toe with the intelligence agencies, as I believe it was Chuck Schumer said about Trump, they have 6 ways from Sunday of getting even with you. So I would be exceedingly concerned for these people, especially since the people who usually put people in witness protection programs are going to be the people going after them. Not cool. There are now 2 FBIs, Parker said, citing a shift in recruiting practices and lowering of eligibility requirements that has transformed a calling into merely a very dangerous, high-risk job. Honorable agents now just work hard and stay off the radar to claim their pension. That is what happens with this kind of thing. Republican Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson testified on how federal agencies tried to thwart their investigations into the Biden family's financial dealings, among others, and falsely portrayed them as Russian stooges, including through misleading leaks. The 89-year-old Iowa Republican, holy cow, he's old, railed against the FBI, media, and Democrats as a triad of disinformation and outright falsehood. The younger Wisconsin Republican promised a full investigation into the genesis of the impeachment saga against Trump and a forthcoming report with far greater detail on the attempted sabotage of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Representative Jamie Raskin accused Republicans of using pure psychological projection to brand their opponents with their own violations, citing Trump's dismissal of inspectors general. The cancer-stricken House Oversight Ranking member noted Jordan's public comments that GOP investigators will frame up the 2024 election for Trump's return to office. I don't think he can really say that with any measure of good faith, given that they have whistleblowers from the institution itself. Those people need to be heard out, and I'm very glad they're speaking now. The government has a long history of lying to us and is now working through their arms in media and big tech to control what Americans can see and say. Venturi and former Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard warned, "They think we're too stupid to think for ourselves." She's entirely spot on. The ex-Democrat said America increasingly resembles a banana republic that threatens challenges to the establishment. Her Google Ads account was mysteriously suspended after a presidential primary debate that prompted widespread searches for her campaign, and she showed up on the debunked Hamilton 68 dashboard of a supposed Russian bots. Survey data show Americans increasingly view the FBI itself as politicized and a threat, according to George Washington University's Jonathan Turley, law professor, who said he's nearing 60 appearances before Congress as both the Democratic and GOP witness. Good for him, truly bipartisan. Just the information revealed by the Twitter files, covering only the 15th largest social media network by users, shows that this may be the largest censorship system in the history of our country, even if it falls short of creating an agency relationship bound by the First Amendment, he said. Isn't it interesting how all of this FBI corruption overlaps so neatly with the Twitter files? It's almost like the FBI has a finger in every single possible pie because they want the most possible influence they can get. They've really been successful. Well, we'll end this part on this note. Oversight Chair issues sweeping document demands to Biden gatekeeper in a secret records probe. I have no idea why I keep yawning. I'm very sorry. It's not because I'm bored. Investigative panel zeroes in on the former Biden executive assistant Kathy Chung, citing timing of employment and full spectrum access to materials in question. Now, Kathy Chung, in case this article doesn't get into it, was hired at the behest of one Hunter Biden. Isn't that interesting? House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer has issued a detailed request for a former Joe Biden gatekeeper for documents and communications from her time working at the Penn Biden Center, specifically anything relating to her involvement in the handling and removal of highly classified material. The corruption running through the FBI and the Biden family is absolutely exquisite. I think that if a screenwriter were to offer this up as a movie, the producers would shoot him down and say it's way too on the nose, way too involved. It's too complicated for one thing. But at the same time, there's a certain beauty to it because it all seems to point in the same direction. Incredible corruption from the intelligence agencies, incredible corruption from our politicians, and them working hand in hand with social media and big tech. All right, speaking of, oh my gosh, pardon me. Speaking of the FBI, I went up instead of down there. Breaking, the FBI rescinds memo citing Southern Poverty Law Center after Daily Signal report. This one's a doozy. The Federal Bureau of Investigation rescinded a report on racial traditionalist Catholic ideology on Thursday. So the FBI had a report on Catholics. One day after an FBI whistleblower published the document and the Daily Signal reached out to the FBI for comment. Former FBI agents condemned the document for citing the Southern Poverty Law Center, a left-wing smear factory infamous for branding mainstream conservative and Christian organizations as hate groups and placing them on a map with Ku Klux Klan chapters. Fascinating. Yeah, so here's their stupid map. I hate the SPLC. While our standard practice is not to comment on specific intelligence products, this particular field office product, disseminated only within the FBI regarding racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism, does not meet the exacting standards of the FBI. Oh yeah, the exacting standards of the FBI. This is what the FBI told the Daily Signal in a statement emailed on Thursday. Upon learning of the document, the FBI headquarters quickly began taking action to remove the document from FBI systems and to conduct a review of the basis for the document, the Bureau added. The FBI is committed to sound analytic tradecraft and to investigating and preventing acts of violence and other crimes while upholding the constitutional rights of all Americans and will never conduct investigative activities or open an investigation based solely on First Amendment protected activity. Every single word of that ridiculously pompous, overwrought statement is a lie. The FBI is not to be trusted for anything. We got briefings that the SPLC was not legitimate when I was at Quantico. Kyle Serafin, who served 6 years at the FBI as a special agent before getting indefinitely suspended without pay in June, told the Daily Signal in a phone interview Wednesday. Serafin published a document on uncoverdc.com on Wednesday. Good for him. I am so in awe of all of these whistleblowers. And I know that I argue with people on Twitter sometimes about the fact that true bravery means attaching your name to what you truly believe. And I think that Jamie Reed is the perfect demonstration of that. I think Kyle Serafin is in the exact same boat. And I think that everyone who's blowing the whistle on these institutionally accepted and pushed ideas, all of these ideologies, incredibly brave. This is who we should be looking up to. These people who are not afraid to stand behind what they believe and what they say. They are willing to be held to account for the things that they say and the ideas that they push. The document, Interest of Racially or Ethnically Motivated Violent Extremists and Radical Traditionalist Catholic Ideology, almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities, bears markings reading unclassified / for official use only and FBI internal use only, do not disseminate externally. So Kyle, thank God, broke this instruction and leaked this to the public. After making this assessment, FBI Richmond relied on the key assumption that racially or ethnically motivated extremists will continue to find radical traditional Catholic or RTC ideology attractive and will continue to attempt to connect with RTC adherents both virtually, via social media, and in person at places of worship, the document states. Who is trying to entrap Christians? Is it far-right extremists or is it the feds? It's the feds. It's always the feds. But they're not just trying to entrap Christians, as we found yesterday. They're also interested in stirring up left-wing protesters. They're just trying to cause trouble anywhere they can. And they don't really seem to care who knows it because they have power. Power corrupts, man. The document claims RTCs are typically categorized by the rejection of the Second Vatican Council, Vatican II, as a valid church council, disdain for most of the popes elected since Vatican II, particularly Pope Francis and Pope John Paul II, and frequent adherence to anti-Semitic, false, anti-immigrant, false, anti-LGBTQ, and white supremacist ideology. This is all entirely nonsense. You can tell exactly where they got this from. The SPLC is full of ish. Radical traditionalist Catholics comprise a small minority compose. The word is not compose. The word should be comprise. Compose a small minority of overall Roman Catholic adherents and are separate and distinct from traditionalist Catholics who prefer the traditional Latin Mass and pre-Vatican II teachings and traditions without the more extremist ideological beliefs and violent rhetoric. When is the last time we had a Catholic motivated by their religion commit a mass crime like a mass shooting or bombing or anything like that? Can you even remember the last time you heard about a Catholic doing something big like that? Because I certainly cannot, and I read the news all day. Maybe you guys can point me in the direction of like a historical context where this happens. I don't remember anything right off the top of my head. The FBI Richmond document does not hide its sources for information about radical traditionalist Catholics. In a perspective note, the document states, as of 2021, the Southern Poverty Law Center identified 9 RTC hate groups operating in the United States. There's your red flag. The document dated January 23rd, 2023 includes an appendix with the complete list of organizations the SPLC brands radical traditional Catholic hate groups, without any note that the SPLC's hate group accusations have faced severe criticism and without any note about reaching out to the organizations for comment about the claim. This is literally just sniping from the distance. These people probably don't even know that they've literally made it onto an FBI list. This is putting people at risk. Unclassified / for official use only, for internal use only, do not disseminate externally. Ha ha, he disseminated it externally. Ha! Southern Poverty Law Center defined RTC hate groups in the U.S. following the 9 RTC hate groups operating in the U.S. in 2021 as defined by the Southern Poverty Law Center, followed by the location of their organizational headquarters. Catholic Apologetics International, Greencastle, Pennsylvania. Catholic Family News / Catholic Family Ministries, Inc., Niagara Falls, New York. Christ or Chaos, Corsicana, Texas. Culture Wars / Fidelity Press, South Bend, Indiana. The Fatima Crusader / International Fatima Rosary Crusade, Buffalo, New York. In the Spirit of Chartres Committee, Glenelg, Maryland. The Remnant / The Remnant Press, Forest Lake, Minnesota. Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, town of Richmond, New Hampshire. And The Tradition in Action, Los Angeles, California. Website, Southern Poverty Law Center. Wow, they really just took it right from the Southern Poverty Law Center's website. As I explain in my book, Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center, this is the right person to write this article then, the SPLC took the program it used to bankrupt organizations associated with the KKK and weaponized it against conservative groups, partially to scare donors into ponying up cash, and partially to silence ideological opponents. Exactly. That's exactly how they work. After the SPLC fired its co-founder amid a racial discrimination and sexual harassment scandal in 2019, that's nice. It's almost like they're projecting constantly. A former staffer claimed that the SPLC's accusations of hate are a cynical fundraising scam aimed at bilking northern liberals. Critics across the political spectrum have voiced opposition and alarm at the organization's hate group smears. In 2012, a terrorist targeted the Family Research Council's headquarters in the nation's capital, entering the lobby with a semi-automatic pistol and then shooting and wounding a guard. The man told the FBI that he found the conservative organization on the SPLC's hate map and intended to kill everyone in the building. I would like to let that sink in. The SPLC actually motivated a shooter to go into a building with the express intention of murdering everyone there. And this is who the FBI is using to decide who they should look at more closely. In this instance, Catholics, the most dangerous group of all, as we all know. The man later pleaded guilty to committing an act of terror and received a 25-year prison sentence. The SPLC condemned the attack, but has kept the Family Research Council on its hate map ever since. They learned nothing. No one has held them to account. We have no leaders who are willing to deal with this, and now they're influencing the FBI. I know the FBI has walked this back, But as far as I'm concerned, this is just the big ask. They are going to continue to use the FBI, to use the SPLC's guidance as they continue to decide who to go after, because apparently they're really, really freaking bored. Using the SPLC in this manner violates longstanding FBI practices, according to George Hill, whose 11 years at the Bureau included a stint as a supervisory intelligence analyst. Among other things, he supervised the reports regarding the Boston Marathon bombing in April 2013. Hill told the Daily Signal in a phone interview Wednesday that one of his primary roles was the editing and approval process of the various intelligence products. There are a very strict group of guidelines that come from the Directorate of Intelligence. The product in question here is the Intelligence Bulletin, which is primarily designed in this particular case for distribution to Bureau-only personnel. He said he would call the report poorly sourced from sources who use unsubstantiated data to draw their own conclusions and not in compliance with FBI publication guidelines. He noted that the Directorate of Intelligence released guidelines barring analysts from relying on the SPLC. So they literally said, don't use this source, and they're using it anyway. They would have had to either change the guidelines since I left, that you can look up now, that you can now use the SPLC, or the author and their supervisor who approved the final document knowingly violated the Director of Intelligence guidelines, he said. Steve Friend, a former SWAT team member who worked at the FBI for 8 years before getting indefinitely suspended last September, also faulted the FBI for the document. It is clear that the FBI is failing to utilize counterbalancing sources of information in its efforts to generate intelligence products. Relying solely on sources such as the SPLC, the Atlantic, and Salon, oh my gosh, Salon defends people who are attracted to minors. Salon demonstrates the FBI is beginning as a predetermined conclusion to target traditionally conservative Americans for undue scrutiny and persecution. Serafin, the whistleblower who published the document, noted that there are 70 million Catholics in the U.S. and said this should get their blood boiling. They're literally opening the door to targeting any other Christian faith with this report, he warned. The SPLC claims it does not brand Christian organizations as hate groups merely because they oppose same-sex marriage, but many of its accusations boil down to a disagreement on LGBT issues. The SPLC branded the Ruth Institute as an anti-LGBT hate group, in part because its founder, Jennifer Roback Morris, called homosexual activity intrinsically disordered, pulling a direct quote from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The country of the United States is now diametrically opposed to the fundamental beliefs of the Catholic Church. And I personally have been expecting this for quite some time, but it's still rather jarring. Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares addressed the documents in comments to the Daily Signal. The right to worship freely is fundamental and sacred. This sort of government abuse, the FBI spying on faithful Virginia Catholics and treating them like potential terrorists, is what I expect in communist Cuba, not here in a country founded as a beacon of freedom for religious minorities. He described it as truly terrifying that the FBI might be taking its pointers from the thoroughly discredited report issued by the far left-wing Southern Poverty Law Center. Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland have a lot of explaining to do. Virginians deserve to know whether the federal government is treating them like terrorists because of how they worship. That's a lot of words we're not going to read right now. This is redacted. Wow, that's crazy, and I'm going to have to share this with my family. They are Protestant, but they will find this incredibly interesting as well. Let's see what you guys are thinking about this. Holy cow, it's already 7. Time has flown. I dozed off for a few minutes, LOL. Well, hopefully my yelling about this brought you back around. Oh, this dude's playing Last Dance with Mary Jane right now. What a classic. I'm very glad that Andy is enjoying all the music in Nashville and sharing his adventures with us. Too much parent puppy watch. Interesting. Hillary, cancer stricken. Yes, cancer stricken. That is what Jamie Raskin is. People are making fun of his scarf. Don't make fun of people's scarves until you know what they're for. That's not nice. Being on chemo is horrific. It's not fun. I used to think anytime I would take care of someone with cancer that if the cancer doesn't kill you, the chemo might. I'm sure they have a file on the two of us. For sure they do. I know for sure that I was certainly on a list, especially since we got swatted at Timcast and I was in a studio with the leader of the Proud Boys. I was in with James O'Keefe and Andy No, with pretty much everybody. Marjorie Taylor Greene, everybody who might be on a watch list, I am on with as well. Typical KKK Catholics. Thank you, Andy. That's wonderful. White supremacy means Western biblically based values, apparently. Everyone knows that KKK and Catholics go together like peas and carrots. Although, to be fair, there's a book on that shelf about some pretty radical Catholics. LOL. Oh, is it this book? Is it this book about the IRA? Because those are some pretty freaking radical Catholics. I was talking to my dad the other day, too. And I was like, Dad, were any of our family members in Ireland during the Troubles? And he said no. He said they left right before the Great Potato Famine, thankfully. Adrian's here. Wonderful. Hello, Adrian. How's it going? A witch list. Haha, that's right. I said it. I'm not walking it back. I stopped clicking the road to perdition because it's also effing hysterical. Ted Cruz, judicial nominee today. Activists who go on feelings and not by the rule of law. Of course not. Of course not. All right, I think we're going to wrap it here. There's a bunch more about the Chinese balloon. The U.S. is launching ICBMs in the Pacific as part of a nuclear deterrence mission because we've really lost ground in our aggression against China. The Pentagon is developing a new weapon of mass destruction, which are thousands of drones that work together to destroy enemy defenses, but experts fear humans will lose control of the swarms. That's exciting. That's not literally directly out of Black Mirror. And the U.S. shoots down a second unidentified object over Alaska, according to the Pentagon. So the world is going to heck in a handbasket, which is always fun, but at least it's not dull. So I look forward to seeing you guys all on Monday. I'm very sorry, Adrian, you just joined us. Adrian says, been better, but life is lovely. I'm very glad that you are doing all right. I saw your recent sad news. I'm very sorry. Hopefully you are feeling better since then. Adrian, she is our local celebrity. We love having her in the chats. You should definitely rewind, Adrian, and see what I was talking about because I got super fired up on several different occasions, mostly about the FBI targeting Catholics because that's just insane. But it does look like they might actually be going to release the Epstein files. So I am excited for that. But we'll see what happens. I'll believe it when I see it, for sure. Josh Hawley doing great stuff, and I'm very impressed. All right, you guys, I'm going to go continue getting the house ready for Andy's return and watching that show about witches who were burned at the stake who turned out to actually be witches and should have probably definitely been persecuted in such a way. You guys should check it out for sure. It's called Stan vs. Evil. I enjoy it immensely. It's very silly. It's very violent. There's swearing. There's, gratuitous blood. It's very dumb and very funny. I just enjoy it. I kind of like Shaun of the Dead and stuff like that and all of that other kind of zombie stuff. Oh, you guys, I need your help before we go. There was a movie with Adam Driver in it that was about zombies. Do you remember what that was called? I'll give you guys a minute because I really want to look that one up. It looked hilarious and it looked a lot like, The Pub at the End of the World or whatever. And I can't remember what it was called. I cannot. I have serious qualms with my church, but yeah, I should definitely be prejudiced against. Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to go look up that movie myself. You guys are not helping. No worries. I will see you all on Monday. Until next time, bye guys. How's it going?